Hey, thanks for coming to part 2 of this episode. If you want to find part 1, check the show notes below for a link, or click the info card at the top of the screen right now. Otherwise, please enjoy the rest of the show. So no excuse, but then of all of the conventions that you did have to cancel, have all of them given the option of rollover at some
Yes.
whenever they're able to open
for
again?
now,
Okay.
so far, yes.
Now,
From 2020 to 2022 to 2021, yes.
Okay.
They've offered
Okay.
rollover. We'll see what happens.
So now the question, actually, the question I was just going to ask you actually just already answered. Let's come back to loans, if we can. Unless Moose, you had any follow up about conventions again.
No, we can hit it back at the end.
How did you start finding out about the loans? Because that was a kind of a big mystery, and lots of people weren't even aware of one, they exist. 2, where do I look? What are the ones that are available? How did you start digging up that information?
Friends and Facebook groups. I would say the first individual that comes to mind is right down there, Moose, who has a lot of artist friends, and he was like, holy shit, and he probably did some research on his own and found out and shared it. And I am eternally grateful for that. I think it was literally Moose's link that he sent me on Discord in a PM that I eventually looked into because like many creative people, I see forms and my eyes glaze over and I want to just
Amen
blow
to
my
that.
brains out, right? But eventually I looked into it fairly soon, I would say, because time was of the essence there, and I could see what was coming. So it was Moose. It was other friends. It was being part of Facebook vendor groups and artist groups that people were starting to post things about and post links and who got this loan, did not get that loan, and questions and answers, which most of them you couldn't even count on the answers being accurate. But it really was just kind of a coincidence. If I was left to my own devices, if I was not on social media, if I was not streaming, etc., I probably would have just kind of stayed in my hole and died. Slowly of starvation, because I would not have known about those things. So thank you, Moose. I'm eternally grateful for that.
Was that one specifically the one that had the $1,000 stimulus plus the long-term loan with very low rates?
That's exactly the loan that I got that's helping me survive this year.
Is that one still available, or is the stimulus from that one already gone?
I don't know. I think the stimulus specifically, the $1,000 check specifically, was maybe limited time, but I'm not sure. As far as the actual loan, and the loan itself, again, was worth it. Hell, for all we knew, what my one friend said, look, take the loan, because as a loan itself, even in a normal year, those are great terms, but there may not be a bank to pay back to. There may not be a government to pay back to in a year. So, no, you know what? That's a great point. So, take the loan. Normally, my advice to people would be don't borrow money that you can't pay back, but that was actually I needed to survive. I literally needed it to survive, and many other artists did too. So, it was literally friends like you, Moose, and other artists that I heard about things, and eventually I had to just push myself to go and face the fear of a government form that I have to fill up and give all the information. And that's one thing that, in hindsight, I really am actually grateful to myself for, because I had made the decision a couple of years ago to start doing everything above board, right? Everything is on the books, right? As close to it as I can get, right? When you start out, especially being creative and going to conventions, you're like, everything is cash, and when you sell stuff, PayPal, it's like, can you send it friends and family, and and you don't you may, let's not state things as fact, you may not report everything to the IRS, and you may things like that, and that
I don't know what you're talking about.
Right, exactly. And that may be great in the short term, but then shit happens like a pandemic, and all of a sudden 90% of your income being conventions is canceled, and you have to apply for a loan. And if you didn't pay your dues beforehand for a while, so at least a year, so you have something to show for it, you're shit out of luck. And I Really am grateful to myself that I made that decision that I need to be a big boy and actually pay all the sales tax and all the income tax and all of that, and file all the correct things so that I can show, hey, this is what I make in a year, and this is what I expect not to make in this year, and I need help. And that I could see artists who are in the same exact boat as I am, right? They artists making a living mostly off conventions, et cetera, except the only difference is that they did not make that shift to make everything official, and they did not get approved for loans because, unfortunately, banks are the way they are, and when you show them that you only make $10,000 a year, they're like, nope, Or if they approve
Yeah.
you for the loan, you'll get a loan of $1,000, something that'll keep you going for maybe a couple of weeks or a month, but not what you really need. So,
Well, and
yeah,
there's another valuable business insight in that as well. I mean, aside from planning for a pandemic, or
right,
world-changing event, because you could even still say, well, I'll just roll the dice and hope that doesn't happen again or whatever. But if you're running a business as an independent artist, keeping track of your numbers is vitally important, and it's if you're keeping track enough of your numbers to know what you're like may or may not gonna pay in taxes, then just make it happen, because like all of the reasons that you're saying. But usually the people that aren't paying enough attention or keeping enough track of the numbers to bother worrying about their taxes accurately might be surprised at where they're losing money because they're just not keeping track in the way that they should or could better. Anyway,
right.
that's more of an
And there's
aside, but
also, with aside from just a crisis, that like a pandemic or anything else, maybe your health, or maybe, I don't know, your studio burnt down or whatever. There could be just, hey, I really want to push to grow, and I need more money to sign up for bigger conventions or to hire a full-time social media guy or whatever. If you don't have
yeah.
the numbers to show, you won't be able to grow as fast as you could, as if you took a loan. So I actually used,
Yeah.
it's relevant. I actually used a sizable chunk of the loan that I got to hire a marketing person that took a look at my website, and some of it was simple stuff that I just did not have the know-how, the energy, or the time to do. Right, like creating a mailing list and updating the website and doing some nuts and bolts stuff, and some of it is posting to various things and prompting me to do certain things. So I actually used some of that money to benefit my business, to help me survive, but also in the long term.
Unfortunately,
Coming back. Oh no, sorry. Go ahead, Moose.
unfortunately, not everyone at the start of the pandemic anticipated having such a negative impact. So, not everybody I know had such a large amount of income tied up with conventions. Most of them, a lot of people had almost all of their income coming from commissions. And at first, it looked like the commission income was remaining pretty consistent even after the start of it. But now, 8 to 9 to 10 months into the pandemic, they're starting to see that they're having much fewer commissions. So it stands to reason that if this thing keeps going on and they release another stimulus, let's hope, knock on wood, or glass, as the case may be, that artists will take advantage of it this time, even if it isn't looking especially grim at this moment, because it could look grim later.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we don't know how long this is going to last. I fully expect this to last at least until mid 2021, if not farther, as far as conventions not running. There are small conventions still running. There are, and it's entirely irresponsible, in my opinion. Right. So there are conventions, especially in states like Florida, that are still happening. There's small conventions. There's farmers markets. I know vendors who are selling at malls. They have, like, those stalls at malls now. I still would consider it a lottery to die. It's A, irresponsible, B, it's a lottery I'm not willing to play with my own health. So, but it might come down to me having to go get a job somewhere, and then then which lottery do I want to play, right? But you do what you have to do, I guess. And Joby knows it, and you know it, Moose. So we've all done what we have to do this year. Start an
Yeah.
OnlyFans.
Here we go. Starting
subscribe
now. So Moose, this was something that I think you've probably gotten a bit more feedback on than I have, and Cave, maybe you've heard a lot of the same too. That a lot of artists were hesitant to reach out for loans. They were having some various hangups about it. Do you have thoughts on why that would be, and like what advice you might have to say to people in that position?
Me? Get over it. realize that it falls back. I mean, like I said, I hate loans just as a person. Maybe it's the way I was brought up. I see forms and I get a headache, right? There's a reason why creative people, for the most part, choose to bury their faces in a sheet of paper with some paint or a lump of clay or whatever, right? And not everyone is like that, but a lot of us are. But also get over it, because you have to realize that I think it's the same shift as when you decide to go pro with your art, right? When it's no longer a hobby and you really want to make a living to whatever measure. But when you start selling your art, it's a big shift when you start taking it more seriously, and you realize that, okay, I have to take myself seriously, and this is literally a survival situation. Maybe my knowledge, my experience with actual physical primitive survival helped get some perspective on it. Like, money is a survival resource that allows me to have shelter, water, fire, food, right? My survival priorities. I need money to survive this year. I hate having a 9-to-5 job. I'm terrified of it. And so I have to do what I have to do, and that means swallowing my pride and taking a loan and going fill up forms. And so when I fill up forms, I still get the headache looking at it. So I do a little bit every day, right? I might print it out and I'll fill up just a section a day so I can deal with it mentally, emotionally, whatever your challenges are of dealing with that amount of weird words and math and all that. I'll just split it into smaller tasks, just one bite at a time. So I'll do the first page or the first section of the first page one day, and then the next day, and the next day, and just till I finally get it all done, and then eventually I'll submit it all at once. But take it in pieces. I do that with taxes. One day I'll pull up, one stream revenue, income revenue. The next day I'll pull up the data from another. The next day I'll pull up just so it's not overwhelming. So if there's any advice, I'll say get over it and then cut it to chunks. Do what you need to do to survive, and then cut it to chunks that you can manage. Obviously, do what you need to do to survive without doing anything illegal, please.
Especially because the IRS recently said they're more likely to target people with small incomes than with large incomes, because it's easier for them to do that.
Did they?
That's brutal when the government just comes right out and says, we're tired of pretending. We're just gonna start screwing the little guy outrightly. No problem. Do you know?
The IRS is watching this. I don't know these guys.
The views expressed here are not entirely my own. They were anyway. The idea of loans and more assistance. Are you aware of any other opportunities or things that you might look into in the future, or is it all kind of just we're waiting to see what happens?
It's kind of a mix, because it's hard to tell if things don't come back to normal. So what I expect, it'll come back to normal sort of in the opposite order in which it went abnormal, right? So, like Moose said, commissions, people's private money, their private commissions, when those kept going for a while, and now they're starting to drop, right? And I expect those will come back before conventions will come back, because conventions will be the last thing to come back full swing, because it's events with tens of thousands of people. So those will be the last things to come back. So it's kind of a thing where you have to wait and see what will happen. If, as an artist, you don't have commissions and you don't have public outlets for it, like to sell prints, like conventions, well, then you're done, right? You're just not going to be an artist anymore for a living as a professional. So we all have to face that potential reality that maybe this doesn't come back, and art has, maybe we have a dark ages of art for a couple of years, right, where people just don't have the money to spend on luxuries because it's purely a luxury. The bullshit we all make. I have a friend. She's a great artist. She's on Twitch. I'm not going to say her name though. She always considers it trash. She's like, we make garbage. We make pretty pictures on pieces of paper and we sell them, and that's a luxury, right? And during a time of crisis, only rich people have money for luxuries, and even then, most rich people are rich because they know when and when not to spend their money. So commissions dry up, right? So we may have to look at doing other things, and it's scary. It's fucking terrifying. I kind of looked into
if we
I kind of looked into
go
3D
ahead.
design. I kind of looked into learning 3D design, and I still want to do that. So it's still in the back of my mind, and just make other plans because you may have to use them.
What about?
I feel like there's. I have to comment that I think that there's been like a delay. The whole like stream, there's been a bit of a delay on like when you guys start talking and when I start hearing the audio come through. So throughout this, I feel like I've been talking over people a lot, and I'm sorry. That's not hasn't been intentional. Got some.
Yeah, I think it was part of
delay
the settings stuff we changed before the start of the stream, because it wasn't that way before the stream when we first started.
All right.
But anyway, the question I was going to ask was, one of the ways that you can manage this is by increasing the amount of money that you have available through loans and stuff like that. But another thing you can do is reducing the amount that you spend. Has there been anything that you've been doing to, trim the fat so you can survive this year?
Well, as a freelance artist, the fat was really, I didn't have much fat to begin with. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going out less, which perhaps is more of a factor of there's a virus out there. So, I buy if I can, I'll buy some things in bulk, so it's a little cheaper. There are a lot of things, certainly more this year than before. Some luxury items where I'm thinking, okay, do I want a better version of this thing that I have, whether it's a monitor or whatever, a keyboard, whatever equipment, right? And I do want it, but I don't need it, right? The money that would cost me is better served right now by paying rent and buying food, or at least keeping it in the bank for now. So, reading chat.
Yeah.
We clearly stopped buying razors. All of us are fuzzy. So yeah, you save where you can, but it's not like I'm not eating ramen the entire year just to save up.
Well, it's worth noting, just from kind of like reading through chat, I can hear Farley's gears turning from here. She's coming up with ideas. Some of us are more business minded than others, and so we're all looking at you, Farley, to save our ass here, or people like you. I think that there's like an opportunity for the more entrepreneurial minded among us to step in and figure out some. That's the diehard optimist in me wants to think that in crisis there are people that like step up and have great ideas and come up with new things, and
Mhm.
the proof of the network that all of us are in, and the support and the encouragement and the community that we all feel as part of that is proof to me that there is there there is hope. I just don't, this, we can get like very doom and gloom, and it's important to weigh in on the negative aspects and the negative fallout. But I think too, like if we're inclined to just start thinking that it's all just going to shit and we're all going to end up in the worst case possible, keep yourself part of a community, get into a community. If you're not part of one already, start finding and making those connections, because that's what really saves us. And the more that you're talking to other
100%.
people about these things, and bouncing ideas off of each other and trying to figure out new ways of figuring things out, at the very least you run into people like Moose, who is like, hey, here's where you can get some money. and that in
Right.
itself
Yeah.
fucking makes the whole thing worth it.
The point of
Yeah,
online
there's
conventions was mentioned in chat, and I have only tried a handful of them this year. Most of them were really small gaming conventions that I was going to be at and all that. And for the most part, from looking at what other artists or vendors in general, not just artists, but convention vendors in general who have done online cons, the majority, the consensus seems to be that it's really not, at least currently, not a place where you're going to make money. You make some, you might have a few sales. The problem with those is it's kind of uncharted territory. Those websites that offer those platforms and the promoters themselves of the conventions are learning as they go. When
Mhm.
DragonCon online was virtual DragonCon was happening, Eventany, which was the website that was hosting the convention, which is basically just an an e-commerce platform, right? They literally like had to build the night before the convention. Like their web design guy was working overnights because people I know who are vendors were telling them we need these features added, right? Which were features that any e-commerce website has, and those companies just didn't think of, right? So it's ridiculous, but they were adding those things last minute, and there were bugs and all that. So 2020 is kind of the holy shit, what are we doing? And maybe those things will improve in 2021. Then the problem becomes that some of the conventions, even this year, some of the really big ones like New York Comic Con or which one is it in? There was Luca and there was Essen in Germany. It's a big gaming convention. They were already charging hundreds of dollars for virtual booths for vendors, which is insane, right? And you have to decide: do I want to be a guinea pig for that, right? Um, so it's tough. Online conventions, as long as so far at least, as long as they're free or a really nominal fee. DragonCon didn't charge us anything as vendors to be a vendor at Virtual DragonCon, but the platform itself charged us a percentage. I think it was a 5% fee on top of what you'd pay, PayPal or whatever fee, right? To credit card fees, etc. Um, but it was better than nothing, right? So you might make a few sales and all that, but online conventions don't seem to be the answer as well, at least not for the time being, not until we figure things out and the public's perception of it changes. I think, in my opinion, when it comes down to it, there's still just an online marketplace. There's no the people go to conventions because they want to hang out with their buddies. They don't go to conventions to shop. The shopping is kind of a secondary thing. So um, without that element of it, people are less likely to go shop around an online marketplace. You might be able to have. There was one convention that they actually hired me, so that was a commission this year, to make them a digital fantasy map of their vendor hall. And that was really an interesting project. What they were going to do is basically place the tents of vendors and all that. And initially they wanted logos on every tent and things like that. And they wanted to make it almost like a Google Maps thing where you could zoom in and out. Um, And and there was some discussion, not with me doing it, but there was just some hypothetical discussion about a virtual reality sort of convention hall. But it's honestly, that's a gimmick that will work maybe once, right? There's a reason why websites still haven't changed much. Websites are still in the format of a list of text on a page since the internet
Let
was
me
born. Because,
let me jump in. Sorry, and interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Keep talking. Keep talking. Moose,
Mhm.
have a follow-up question. I have to go to the bathroom, so I'm going to mic off and video off for 1 second. We're making history.
All right. So yeah, I think it's there's a reason why the internet is built the way it is, because it's still the most convenient way to deliver information to people. Just icons and text in a list. It's just the most condensed, effective way of doing it. So I don't think until virtual reality and the Matrix are a big thing and a common thing, I don't think we're going to see virtual conventions becoming something that we can really do well at, or not even close to as well as we do in person.
So have you tried to do anything to get people to come to your store so they can buy stuff during the pandemic if the booths themselves online aren't functioning that way?
Uh, the normal stuff, the normal marketing, social media, maybe ramped up a little bit in some ways. In other ways, it's kind of gone down because I have less to do. Fewer commissions, fewer events, so there's fewer reasons to post stuff. And I don't like reposting old things. So, but that's just my own personal hurdle that I need to just get over. So, um, like I said, I hired somebody to do some website work and some basic marketing work for me, including in places like Reddit, where I have not really, roamed into before. Streaming a lot more, right? I'm streaming maybe more hours, more days. Not because of that. It's kind of a side effect that helps, I guess. Um, Definitely a holiday sale, which I'll plug if I'm allowed. But thumbs up. All of my prints are 20% off, or buy two get one free. So if you want more than one, just go to my website, use the code B2G1 if you want to buy two get one free, or the code 2020 if you want to get 20% off. And commissions, etc. Just email me and I will work with you.
My mom loves your Breath of the Wild map, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I got that as a gift for her when you first made prints of those.
Thank you, Moose Mom.
After the show, don't let me forget to get that information that you just shared about like all your promotional stuff, so we can include that in the show notes as well.
Oh, thank you. Cool.
So there was one thing that we talked about a little bit in chat, but not in the stream, and that was David Peterson. He ran his own online con, which was more or less like for him. It wasn't like a group effort so much as it was a effort for him to promote his own store. But he was able to reach out to his buddies that he had met through the years to come on and be guests of his stream that he ran for several days, and he was able to do that successfully, or successfully in terms of like the amount of additional sales he got. But it was also a big production. It was not a small amount of effort that he put into coming up with talks, getting in presenters, and that sort of thing. So there is a potential for people to make their own conventions if they're able to, garner enough interest or garnering enough interesting attractions to bring to their stream. And I know you know someone named I think it's Larry Elmore. So
He's a little known. He's a new up and coming fantasy artist. He's still learning.
um, well, Farley had a question in the chat. A lot of passion projects have started during the pandemic. Have you explored any other types of things that could push you into a new area of art or collaborations?
Yes. First of all, especially this year, again, I work better under pressure. And when I realize, oh crap, the writing on the wall is not just on the wall over there. It's like I'm about to hit the damn wall. Then I start working really, really fast and really hard. So I've been meaning to do some digital work, and I was kind of already starting to do digital maps at the end of 2019, but then 2020 happened, and I'm like, oh crap, I gotta move into markets that I've not been into before. So I started doing digital maps that are made sort of the same way as my physical ones. Just I make the handmade assets for maps, so individual mountains and trees and buildings and whatever, and then I photograph them, and then I edit those in Photoshop, and then make digital maps out of all those assets. So they're not unique in that sense that the same asset might show up several times within the same map, and definitely across different maps. And then I started posting those as map packs or asset packs on Roll20 and my own website. So that was new for me, and I can't say that it's like hugely successful, but anything is better than nothing. And you sort of, like anything else, when you start something new, you really have to build a fairly large portfolio of that stuff to even get people's attention, right? So it takes a while. So we'll see what happens. I've been talking more with friends about collaborating, mostly for fun, not so much for income. Just because I don't have commission work coming in as much as I used to. Not that it used to be a whole lot, but my commissions are also slow. It could take me a month or two to work on a project. So because it's just a slow process. So now that I don't have as much, so I've been talking to Artur Bianca about maybe doing some stuff together, and Daria Axonova to maybe do something together. Mostly because I think, it would be really fun to take what this artist does and put my unique spin on it. So I think that's pretty much all I've been doing as far as that goes. Is new stuff.
Farley's asking another interesting question. Calm down, Farley. All right, I'm kidding. She asked, "Is there a way to work with other character artists for D&D related things and bundle packages together? So if someone comes in and asks for character work, chances are they have a game going. But for a discounted referral price, they could get their map too."
Sure, there is a way. Unfortunately, it comes down to the market and what they can afford. So that has been talked about, I'm sure, on this stream, on this podcast a lot, about what you've got groups on Facebook or whatever, or subreddits where people are willing to pay only $20 for a full color, fully rendered character. And then and sure, that's all they can afford. It's hard to judge people when that's all they can afford. I can't even afford that, right? If I could, I would hire Joby and a million other artists to draw stuff for me just because it's fun. So, but we can't afford to work on in those rates. So is it possible for someone to get a discount on a map because they also ordered a bunch of characters from Joby or Steve Sketches or Blake? Sure, I'd be happy to. Or vice versa. If somebody hires me to make a map and they want their characters drawn, I would absolutely be happy to do that. But I think we're really dealing with the reality that people's wallets are shrinking every day, less and less, and they're willing to spend less and less. So when you start talking about a bundle, no matter how much the discount is in a bundle project like that, it's still going to amount to a whole lot of money. And then the numbers, just literally the math of the numbers of people who have that kind of income is dwindling fast. It really goes down quickly. So the number of needles, if you've gone to conventions, it's the same thing. During conventions, how many originals would I sell? Almost none, right? At a convention, because people go to conventions with a budget of $20 to $50 to buy something. It's a couple of needles in a haystack of tens of thousands that have the will, the ability, etc., to drop thousands of dollars on an original piece at a convention, right? It happens, but it's extremely rare. And then you have to, out of the entire vendor hall, they have to find you and like your work and want to buy it. So I think it's the same thing now when we're dealing with virtually. It's even harder for them to find you potentially, right? They're not trapped in a room where they might walk in some sort of orderly way and happen to see you. Now you really have to find them, and it's so much harder.
One thing you can do is Pinterest. Put up your maps onto Pinterest, and people will find them that way when they're searching for fantasy maps in general or fantasy characters, whatever
Mm.
your niche is. People will search for them, and then the way that the algorithm works is it'll just look for related content, and if people click on yours, and then it'll boost you up in the ratings. And if your thing looks interesting in their picture, that's great too. But the important thing to do is to make sure that when you do put it on Pinterest, have it link to have the source of the image that's pinned on there be like on Reddit or your website or something, so that when they find that picture on Pinterest and they click it a second time, it'll take it to the source page, which then will have your information where they can either hire you or at least email you, right?
Yeah. Another thing that I
I
would
can second
recommend
that.
doing.
I've started doing
Another
that.
thing. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go
Joey.
ahead. Go
There
ahead,
is
Gabe.
a way. All right. So just recently I saw I've been on a lot more D&D groups on Facebook, and it's become clear how much is being shared, how much stuff that would actually be paid material, right? Copyrighted, whatever, paid publications that are being shared for free. People will literally scan or take a photo of a page from a book and just post it. And noble so somebody who people I respect and all that, they run gaming conventions and all that, and they're sharing stuff just for the sake of putting stuff on their pages and to keep the content going. And they shared a homebrew page, monster page of a cheese elemental, and it just happened to be done. It was at the bottom right of it. It was a whole bunch of text and a piece of art of a cheese elemental for Dungeons and Dragons. At the bottom of it, I saw that it was monster created by Noble Crumpet, which happens to be Allie Briggs' boyfriend, fiance. I'm not sure. Anyway, significant other. But there was no link there, right? So the photo was being shared on Tumblr and other places and Facebook, completely devoid of a way for anyone seeing it to find the original creator, even if they wanted to. I just happened to know who the original creator was, so I went and asked for his links so that I could post underneath those shared images, like, hey, here's the original creator. But 90% of the time, I don't know who the original creator is, and I'm honestly not inclined to start doing the internet sleuthing that it would take to find them. So make sure if you're posting stuff that that people might want to lift and share, make sure at least it has your link so they can find not just your name, because people don't care about your name, but somewhere that they can find you.
Mm-hmm. That's really good advice. I don't even do that. I should be taking that advice myself. I also want to shout out. I feel like it's worth commenting, Cave, that it's probably not a coincidence that the episode that you're on, we have the most hecklers in chat. As I fully hold you responsible for this. Brittany, shout out Brittany's Art Vibes, man, like single-handedly keeping us alive here. Keeping us all from dying in the doom and gloom.
To Brittany and all the other trolls.
There you go. I would like to bring this around and start wrapping this up on a high point. And with that, maybe we can talk a little bit about deer eyeballs.
I might have some. Do you want me to go grab them? Deer eyeballs.
Do you keep them in your Do you keep them in your refrigerator? Do you have like a supply?
Yeah, they're in the freezer. I had a supply. I'm running low, so I should back up and talk about what I do and how I do it. So the original
before you do that, I want to set you up, because I think one of the first few times that I found myself in your stream, you were dissecting a deer eyeball. And I think that maybe you had like a rerun of Highlander going in the corner too, and I was like, oh man, I have to follow this channel. This is 1000% my jam. Yeah. So tell us about the deer eyeballs. How do they work?
So it's how do they work? You just literally poke an eyeball, squeeze out the contents, which is kind of like egg yolk, and you mix pigments with it, and you paint. That's it. But what, Moose?
What? Yeah. What's going on, Moose? What's
Joby likes my
the
balls. Just um.
what's the
So
upset here?
Just
yeah.
some flashbacks to dissecting stuff in uh, in biology classes. It
Oh.
was not fun.
Oh, okay.
So like I said, my background is in primitive technology, primitive skills, etc. Buckskin. I made buckskin for a living and taught the method of how to tan it for over a decade, and it is probably the oldest form of leather that man has ever made. The oldest artifact I'm aware of is a moccasin that is about 10,000 years old, that was found in a cave in Armenia, I believe. But if that technology has existed long enough at that point to make a moccasin, which was fairly tailored, et cetera, and customized, then it's existed for many tens of thousands of years before that. We know Neanderthals were walking around wearing that stuff. Well, at least we know that they were wearing leather clothing or animal hides, because we can see stone tool evidence of it, and we can see needles and things like that, bone needles that they were using. So we can't find actual leather artifacts that are much older because they don't last in the archaeological record very well, not as well as stone or bone. But leatherwork and buckskin in particular, being such a simple method of turning animal hide into usable material, is potentially hundreds of thousands of years old. And it's something that I happened to get into accidentally and started doing for a living, and then I started doing art on it. So what I do is I take buckskin, um, which I don't make anymore. I get my buckskin from a tanner who does it. He lives in Pennsylvania, Lawrence Stallsmith. I think his website is braintanner.com. Great stuff. The only hides better than his were mine, but I don't tan anymore just because my back is bad. So I take the hides, and I will first use a wood burning tool, or pyrography tool would be the proper term, because I'm not burning on wood, but the common name is wood burning. And I'll use a fine tipped tool that I have custom made for me to burn the features of the map onto the skin. And the first time I did that was really because I couldn't figure out a better way of transferring the map of Middle Earth onto a skin. I tried carbon paper. I printed out the map and I tried carbon paper underneath it, and it just wouldn't transfer. I tried all kinds of things. Nothing would work. And then I realized, wait a minute, I have a wood burner. What if I literally burn holes through the paper, just dots around mountains and things and roads and rivers, to transfer sort of a dotted outline of everything onto the hide. Turns out that's actually not in burning, but in actually just poking dots through with a sharp tool is actually an ancient method that, artists have been using for centuries. So I just kind of reinvented it. And so I started doing that. And then I thought, well, I've already used the burner. I might as well, instead of just like using a pen or even just a brush with paint, let's just connect the dots with the burner and burn the rest of it in. And that's when I realized that the burning makes the skin shrivel, because even our skin, when you burn it, it shrinks. And the map became three-dimensional accidentally. And since then, I've learned how to improve on that and really sculpt a three-dimensional relief surface, which is really, really, really cool. Like, that's why I keep doing it, because it is just, every time I do it, I'm like, oh my god, this is fucking cool. It's just fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done not just maps. I've used that to make portraits and wildlife stuff, birds and things that really come to life because they literally pop out of the material. And then I paint. And when I paint, I don't always paint on top, but when I do, I use natural pigments that I don't mix myself. I could, but it just would take so long and add to the work involved, and hence the cost involved, which is already high enough because it takes so long. So I get natural powdered pigments that are non-toxic. They're oxides, or they are ochres and things like that. And I mix them with some sort of a base that would apply them to the piece. most of the time it's water and just glue. I just mix a few drops of water and a few drops of glue with a pinch of the pigment, mix that up. And in rare cases, actually that first map I did, and afterwards, in some special cases, I use the fluid from deer eyeballs. And how did I get to that? I just wanted to make a primitive map, and I wanted to keep it as primitive as possible, except for the burning. And I remembered that the juice from eyeballs is an ancient paint base. I don't know where I heard that factoid, but I had tried it in the past when I used to teach. We used to teach classes. My friend and I taught classes called Using the Whole Animal, where we would start, it was a 4 or 5 day workshop. We would start with a live goat and make it disappear. It was like Willow's disappearing pig trick, but on a slow motion level. It would take 4 or 5 days. We would eat like kings, and we would make stuff out of it. So one time at one of those classes, somebody asked, "What do you do with eyeballs?" I'm like, "Well, you can eat them, but I heard somewhere you can use them as paint base. So let's make paint." So we just took the eyeballs and we painted little cave paintings on some rawhide. So that's how I got the idea. Look, I'll use eyeballs. This is a funny story. I actually went on a first date to a butcher to cut eyeballs out of deer heads. So seriously, it was like we met online. What were you gonna say?
Oh, that was gonna be my next question. Actually, where do you get? Who's your eyeball supplier? Like, where do you get materials like that from?
So back then I would get them. This is 8 years ago. It was during the hunting season, so around this time of year, and I called butchers and would just go down if you're ever in search of deer parts or any animal parts that are animals that are consumed regularly as food anyway, open the phone book, if you still have one of those, on meat retail, and go number by number and start asking questions. Some of those will not be actual butchers, but even if they're not, ask them if they know any. And just start doing the detective work, and sooner or later you'll find some neighborhood butcher that processes deer or whatever, or livestock for the local community. And then you call them and you ask them what they do with their hides or their bones or their sinew or eyeballs. And most of them are like, "What?" And they'll give them to you for free for the most part. Some will charge you some money for it, but for the most part, they'll give it to you for free. If you have hunting buddies, so when I didn't have a butcher around, I had a friend in New Jersey when I lived in New Jersey that hunted more deer in a year than any person does in a decade. And so he had plenty for me. Usually every season I would get several deer worth of supplies, be it hides or eyeballs or anything else I wanted. Now that I moved to Georgia, I don't have that anymore. So I'm going to have to look into it again. As far as the first date goes, it was fine.
Candasaurus in the chat wants to know if there's something particular about deer eyes, or can you use any
eyeball,
any game?
Probably any eyeball. I've used deer. I've not had the opportunity to use pretty much anything else. Just deer are very common, but I'm sure any mammal or bird eye will probably work. I don't know about fish, but maybe. It's basically, it works like is it tempura or whatever? What was it called? Not tempura because it's not fried, but what's when you
tempura.
Use egg whites?
Egg tempura.
Yeah, so it's pretty much the same. It just doesn't flake off and as much as I've heard that egg tempura actually does. But it's basically mix it up with the pigment, paint it on, and when it dries, it stays. And it stays really well. And I actually prefer it. I like working with it better than water and glue. Just the properties of it seem to work better for me. And the glue sometimes changes the color of the pigment a little bit. You have to figure that out. But I don't get a lot of eyeballs, so most of the time I just use water and glue.
In the realm of fantasy art, this isn't something that you see a whole lot of. I mean, not just the eyeball thing.
No.
But,
and I also paint with a piece of bone. So that's why my stream announcement is come watch me rub my bone on my skin.
the whole creative process that you have has a lot of unique characteristics to it. And whereas I can kind of see, the appeal, I can see the appeal in it once people are like aware of it, and they get kind of keyed into the idea. But for you, how did you start realizing or seeking out the market potential for this product? Was there an active plan there, or were you just kind of doing it and it came to you eventually?
Yeah, I was just kind of doing it. There isn't a market for something that doesn't exist, right? And I'm literally the only person I know that does this. So if it doesn't exist, there's no market for it. So my market sort of is a weird overlap between fantasy, cartography, video games. There's like this weird thing, and people look at my stuff and they don't know what they're looking at, and that actually is a problem. When I first started, it was very similar to teaching, and I'm lucky that I had that background, because when you're teaching something, a good teacher will constantly try to fine tune how they deliver the lesson, right? How can I explain this particular bit of information in a way that is more efficient, and the transfer of information, not just me saying it, but also that you actually retain it better, that you understand it better, right? So that I quickly realized that with my stuff, people were looking at it and they had no idea what they were looking at. So I had to come up with the spiel that actually allowed them to understand it. And I'm not sure that I have after 5-6 years, 8 years of doing it. I'm not sure that I have successfully, but so it was tough. So fantasy maps, people see a fantasy map, they know it's a map, but they don't know what it's made of. So then I have to explain how it's made of. And then they look at the prints and they think the prints are the real thing. And I have to explain that no, it's not the real thing. It actually has created probably more problems than anything else.
Do you have plans on how to address those?
No.
Let's say not yet. You're working on it.
Well, I guess I'm working on it. Yeah, it's just tricky. It's especially difficult online. That's another negative side effect to not having conventions, because at conventions people can see and touch. I let people touch my prints. I let them touch the originals, because it's really the only way for them to understand it. Looking at pictures of things is really difficult for people to understand what they're looking at and how I do what I do. I recently adopted a commissions page for my website from my friend Steven Solo Roboto, who does prop work. And prop work kind of comes close to what I do, because he will do anything you hire him to do. He will build whatever out of any material, any size, right? So it's a very wide gamut of things. So he has to explain a lot to people, but why what he does takes a long time and why it costs as much as it does. So I adopted the same sort of commissions page where there's a lot of reading to do. And then once you read all that, which supposedly explains what I do and how I do it, then fill in all this information. If you really want me to do a commission for you, fill in all this information and choose a budget and all of that, so that you know what you're getting yourself into. And honestly, that's been saving me probably a lot of time by filtering out the people who are like, oh.
I feel like you're right for somebody making a documentary. Like this really needs like documentation, and like an actual like, okay, we're gonna make this happen.
Can you narrate it? Because you have a sexy voice for that. It's either you or Morgan Freeman.
I would be all over that. We'll talk more about that. We are coming up on.
My voice?
No, you can do the post credit scene, Moose.
We're coming up on 2 hours. Moose, did you have any other questions?
I did want to mention that we were talking about growing your Twitch channel earlier, and this is much earlier in the discussion. And I saw on Twitter today somebody mentioning that they suggested try getting a lot of drama in your channel. Show yourself as being a victim in order to get grow an audience online. And I hope they were joking, But at the same time, I'm thinking of Disguised Toast, who was a Hearthstone streamer and YouTuber, and he was middle level. Like he had like 200 to 300 viewers, and he wore a mask while he streamed. It was literally like a cutout of cardboard toast with sunglasses on it, disguised toast, right? And then he put out a video saying that someone was trying to blackmail him, and they were going to show his real face. Don't know if that's true or not, or if he manufactured this as a marketing thing, but afterwards he had the entire Hearthstone community behind him to support him, which is pretty big, and he ended up being like a 10,000 concurrent viewer streamer afterwards. But he was also making good content to begin with. So,
well, and also will that
if you're
last? Because it's that big stunts like that have the knack of losing interest after a while. Like
Right.
So
you have to be doing something good anyway, right? So you have to be producing content that people want to see, and this is just a way for them to find you first.
Or keep producing drama.
I guess some people's entire niche is drama, so that's kind of sad. But
I literally bled from my art last night. So is that drama? I poked myself with 4 or 5 needles at the same time.
You have to find people to hate in order to bring the love to you.
Forget the documentary. We're going
right.
Forget the documentary. We're going reality TV with this, and it's like we're going Bravo, like real. What would the title be?
Lifetime, maybe.
Real
I can't believe you would do this to me, Joby.
Of Twitch.
What are you doing?
He was such a valuable part of this community to begin with, and then something changed. I don't know what happened to him, but I think he went through a hard breakup. No, not buying it?
Talking about streaming again, I would give the advice that that anyone that streams, to just go back to that topic. Anyone that considers streaming or is on social media, it's sort of a fight we all have to fight constantly, I feel like. Don't fall into the trap of valuing yourself and your work by the number of likes or viewers you get. It's very difficult to avoid when somebody else has more likes than you, or you post something and you love it and you get way fewer interactions with it than you imagine, or you're not getting viewers. When I started streaming for the first, other than the couple who commissioned me for that map, that was the reason that I started streaming. I streamed for, I think, a month just talking to myself, and the occasional 1 or 2 people who would show up, but I just talked to myself as if I was broadcasting to people, right? I'm doing this now, and this is why, and it was just. But don't value yourself by the number of likes you get, because it comes and goes. I've been streaming for 3 or 4 years, and I have seen not only my own viewers come and go, right? There are very few people, not even a handful. There's like 2 people who were there when I started, who found me really quickly and are still there today. Most have gone away, and maybe they went away for 6 months and then they come back and then they go away again and all that. So your online relationships are temporary. Most of them are temporary, and that's fine. People will come and go, so don't feel bad when somebody who used to be a regular doesn't show up anymore. It's nothing personal. Most of the time, I don't take it personally. And I've seen other streamers, even partners on Twitch, who just disappear, and they come and go, whether they're burned out or they got a job or whatever. So streamers who used to have 200 or 300 people watching them, and now if they get 10 people, it's a good night. Who knows why? I have no idea why, but that doesn't make their art or what they're doing or them as a person any less valuable. So watch for that, because that's a really quick way. That's a very quick downward spiral that you can get sucked into.
Next week we're going to have on a art Twitch streamer who became partnered very recently, and an artist who streams and also has an Instagram that's wildly more successful than their Twitch stream. So it'll be interesting to talk to them about how to balance the two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so on that note, I think that's a great place to put a pin in it. Of course, our last question, Dave, you've answered this recently, so I hope that you have a better answer than you did last time. What's one thing in the world that's really got you excited right now?
One thing in the world that really, oh man. I don't know that I have an answer to that. Hope?
You
I
did
don't
this
know,
to me
really,
last time.
it's very cautious hope, because last time we talked, we didn't have the election yet, so I'm very cautiously optimistic, but that's pretty much as excited as I could get about that. I am excited about Tuna. Yes, that's true. Tuna is just an exciting person in general. Big Tuna Neil. Go follow him.
I
He
was
has
hoping you
never
were just
seen
going to
me.
leave it there without context. Just Tuna,
Oh,
the
okay.
fish.
Just Tuna.
I love tuna.
He has never streamed even once, so go give him a follow. He has like 20 some followers and he's never streamed. That's how cool he is. So no, actually, I am. Look, it's cheesy, but I'm excited to just keep hanging out with my community of people that show up to my stream or the other streamers that I watch, like you and Ali and Blake and Bianca, and I could just rattle off a long list because it's what's keeping me going. So it's just been fun to that's the one semblance of normal that I still have, to hang out with those people. So I'm excited to just keep doing that, and hopefully the world will get better. So
it looks like it's going to get worse before it gets better. Just to end on a low note.
Moose, I was ready. I was so ready for it. That's going to be the perfect outro, but no. Gotta be sour, which is fine because this is all part of the process. You got to have the bitter with the sweet. We'll stick together. But Cave, thanks so much, man.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
This has really been great. I say that to everybody, but I really mean it when I say it to you. All right. I'm going to wave goodbye. Thanks, man.
Goodbye, everybody.
Okay, and then the real goodbye is when I hang up on Discord.